Minds, good morning. We are going to wrap up Borrer. Borrer is obviously, we could spend years on Borrer, but last week we spoke about some of the basic principles, and today I want to focus on some very practical applications. Worth noting that, feel free to push back if you heard things differently. There are different opinions about some of these things, as most things are in Judaism, in halacha. So let's jump in. One of the things that we didn't discuss in detail was the definition of a mixture, right? In other words, the whole prohibition against separating or sorting only begins when you actually have a mixture. If you don't have a mixture, if a book is over here and a book is over there, and I go ahead and I start organizing these books, putting this book in this pile and this book in this pile, they were never together. They're never a mixture. So before we even start the whole discussion of what is how to separate and how to sort, we have to first figure out what is a mixture. Okay, so that's the first thing we're going to discuss. And just to review, the principles we saw last week was that if you do have a mixture, what you are allowed to do is to separate the good, what you want, from what you don't want. Okay, sometimes that is termed as good from bad, although it's not really what it means. What it means is what you want, what's desired. So if let's say you have a pile of cookies, and there are different types of cookies. There are chocolate cookies and vanilla cookies and strawberry cookies. And you don't want to serve the strawberry cookies because the strawberry cookies you want to save for your children for later, or grandchildren for later, whatever it is. So what you are allowed to do, you're not allowed to take the strawberry cookies out. You can't do that, okay? Because taking that would be a form of sorting. What you could do is take all the chocolate and vanilla cookies and put them onto another platter and then serve them, okay? That would be allowed, okay? Because taking the strawberry ones out is a form of sorting, okay? So again, you could do it, you could take what you want from what you don't want. You could take it with your hands as opposed to using some straining type of utensils, and we'll talk about other utensils as well. And the other thing is that if we are separating something, it has to be for immediate use. And last week we spent more time discussing immediate use. What we said was that as long as it's within the preparation time of a meal, that's called immediate. So let's go back to the cookie platter. So that's dessert. That's the end of the meal, but it's still part of a meal. And let's say it takes you 2.5 hours to prepare your Shabbos meal. So within the 2.5 hour period, you could go ahead and take all the vanilla and chocolate cookies and put them onto another platter, even though you're not going to use them for another 4 hours because you're preparing for 2.5 hours, and then the meal is going to start. So it's going to be another hour and a half till you get dessert. That's fine. As long as it's during the prep time of the meal, even if it's going to be served any time during the meal, that's all called immediate. But if you want to go ahead and say, hey, I want to separate these now, and then I'm going to go to shul and or whatever, that I'm going to go and take a break in the middle, that's not allowed. It's only if it's during the continuous prep time, more or less continuous prep time before a meal.
Did you find out if getting,
Sorry. Was that? Yeah.
If you have, you're cutting vegetables for a salad,
Mm-hmm.
and you're doing it before you go to shul, okay? So I think I learned that if you took, you're peeling with a knife, or if you take some of the good with the bad, then that's a...
Right, so there is. We'll get to that right now. That when if a person is separating and they're not really separating one from the other, they kind of are loosely going ahead. If you're chopping an apple, let's say, and you go ahead and you take a chunk with flesh, apple, and one with peel, and then you haven't really separated because you don't take away just the peel from the apple. Sorry, what was I supposed to find out last week?
About getting dressed in the middle.
Getting dressed in the middle. I did not. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, I'll try to get back to it. Okay, so let's go through a bunch of applications of all these principles. There are certainly more to discuss, but I think this will give you a good place to start. So, mixtures. So last week we saw that if you have big and small pieces, the last one we discussed, if let's say you have a bunch of pieces of schnitzel, right? And some of them are small, some of them are big. They're all made the same way. They're breaded chicken, right? Some of them are small, some of them are big. That is not called a mixture. And therefore, if you want to go ahead and say, I want all the small ones out because I want to just serve the big ones, take all the small ones out, that's fine. Because we don't even treat that as a mixture since it's all seen as one thing, right? If it's all the same thing, just because one piece is big, one piece is small, that's not a mixture. That's one type, okay? Similarly, when it comes to meat, sometimes you have end pieces of the meat, right? Let's say you want to take the end pieces out. That's also not considered, it never was really considered a mixture. It's just, you chopped all the meat, and there are end pieces. Actually, end pieces to many are seen as like a delicacy, right? They serve burnt ends. It's like a thing they serve at restaurants. But basically, the end pieces are are not seen as a separate piece. It's all the same type of meat, the same type of chicken. That's all okay. And therefore, it's not even a mixture, and therefore you don't even have to worry about these rules. So again, if you have a whole bunch of cuts of some meat or some chicken or whatever it is, and some are bigger and some are small, some are end pieces, some are not, that's not even a mixture, and therefore you can take the ones you don't want out because we don't even treat it as a mixture. Okay? Let's go to another example, which we do treat as a mixture, and that is broken and whole matzahs. Since halachically there is a very important distinction between a whole matzah and a broken matzah, just like there's a difference between a whole loaf and a partial loaf. Right? So if you want to go ahead, let's say you have a box of matzahs and you want to serve them on Pesach, and you don't want to serve broken matzahs, I don't know why, but let's say you don't want to serve broken matzahs, you want to put only whole matzahs, it looks nicer, so you want to take the broken ones out, that's a problem. That's a problem. Or even if you want to take the ones you want out, you could only do so following the rules of Borrer. You could take the ones you want, which is the whole ones, and then you could take it, only before the meal, you can do it with your hands, right? But it is considered a mixture. Broken, when it comes to, like, again, chicken, where there's no real difference between whether it's big or small, we don't see that as a mixture. But something which is seen even through halachic eyes, meaning since a full piece of matzah is something you can make, make hamotzi on a Shabbos or Yom Tov meal, therefore we do see a mixture of full and broken matzahs as a mixture. And the regular rules of Borrer would apply. Okay? Fine. Fruits, yes, go ahead.
This is really out there, but there's some Indian about not eating the ends of the loaves of bread.
I eat it.
Well, my husband
doesn't eat it.
Okay.
It's
I'm so forgive me for mentioning him in class. So it's supposed to affect your memory. Okay. So is that, so if he's cutting, of course, we're eating it right away, so I guess that doesn't.
So, I mean, what would be, so he cuts the ends.
Don't eat it.
Yeah, he cuts the end. Let's think about what happens. You cut the ends, and basically what happens is, it's the only way you're going to get to the next piece, meaning it's like peeling. So let's say you don't want the ends.
Right.
But just for a taste reason. I mean, even that's not necessarily right. So, but let's say you really feel, I'm not sure if that would be enough, like because it's a minhag. There is a minhag. There is a Chassidish minhag not to eat the end pieces of the challah. Just so no one freaks out on my table, I eat it at my table. So you can send me all your end pieces, and they taste better. What's it called? But so the bottom line is it would be no different than like a banana peel. The only way to get to the fruit, the only way to get to the challah is by cutting that off. So that's fine. Yeah. Yes. It's way beyond my pay scale. I don't know. It's like it's some mystical thing. You're going to come and kashal shikha, cause you forgetfulness. That's I don't know. I can't explain to you why or how or whatever. And
Is that above my side?
it's a minhag. I don't want to. I'm not in the business of smashing, trashing minhagim. It's a minhag. My father is careful about this. I don't know. I don't know where it comes from. But it is. It's a thing. It's a thing. Okay. Fruits and rotten fruits. Okay. So sometimes you open your fridge and you want to serve a bunch of apples, grapes, whatever it is, and you see that some of them are rotten, some of them are a little moldy, but not all of them. So you want to serve them. So you want to separate the rotten from the regular. That is considered a mixture, right? Certainly, right? There's good fruits and there's bad fruit. That's not small or big. One of them is like edible and one of them is non-edible. So in that case, again, you'd have to go ahead and take what you want away from what you don't want. Again, following all the rules of Borrer. But if you have a mixture, right? Good fruit and bad fruits, you're preparing your meal and you realize that some of these fruit are rotten, you can't take the rotten fruit out. That would be Borrer. What you have to do is take the good ones out, right? And then leave the rotten ones there, right? Because or else it would be a form of separating. Asur, midoraisa, okay? Fine. Very interesting, but not so well known, and that is large items in a liquid. Okay, so again, this whole thing is that, do we see this as a mixture? Let's say you have like a pickle, a big pickle, in brine. Is that a mixture? So the poskim say it's not. It's just basically a pickle in liquid. Meaning a mixture is when you have similar but not identical things together, all like this. You have the meat board that was spoken about last week or whatever. You have a bunch of pieces, rotten and non-rotten. They're mixed together. But when you have something which is so distinct from what it's mixed together with, we don't consider that to be a mixture. And therefore, if you have a pickle in brine and you want to get rid of that brine, no problem. You could pour that brine out because it's not seen as a mixture. And therefore, the regular rules of Borrer will not, there's no issue of Borrer. And therefore, again, you have a pickle jar and you want to serve pickles that without the brine. So no problem. Open the can, start pouring it out. No problem, because there's never a mixture here to begin with, and then take your solid pickles. Not a mixture, okay? However, small items in the liquid are considered a mixture. So, for example, if you have corn salad that is saturated in its dressing, right? That's already a mixture, right? Because there, it's not like you have liquid and you have the solid, but there it's like, it's a mush, right? So how do you go ahead? And so to go ahead, we spoke about this last week, certainly to go ahead and use a slotted spoon on Shabbos would be asur. You cannot do that. That is direct form of Borrer. You're picking up the corn, what you want, but it's causing the liquid to drop out. That's certainly not allowed. What you can do is one of two things. Is you could go ahead and pour out some of the liquid, as long as you make sure that some liquid remains. In other words, let's say you have you buy one from the store and sometimes they're super liquidy, you know what I mean? They come in way too much liquid, and so you could open, they do have probably to keep it fresh or just because it's easier to slop it down, whatever it is. So you open it up and you could pour out the liquid, but as long as you make sure that there's liquid still mixed together with the solid. Right? So let's say it's really saturated liquid, so you can start pouring the liquid out. As long as there's still liquid mixed with the solid, then it's not considered separating because the two things, the liquid, which you don't want, and the solid, which you do want, they're still mixed together. Alternatively, you could do the opposite. You could pour out liquid together with some corn. Right? Because then it's the same thing. You haven't really separated what you don't want from what you do want because you've also taken some corn out, right? It's like the case you gave of peeling something where you leave some of the fruit. The whole issue is when I separate, there's two items, A and B, and now A is over here and B is over here. But if I've either left some of B over here or I've put some A over here, right? If I left the juice in the corn salad, right? Enough juice in the corn salad, it's it's still juicy, right? And still some juice there. You're just taking the excess juice off. Or you poured corn out into the bowl, you're pouring the liquid out, then either way, you haven't really separated, and therefore it's okay.
How much corn has to go in?
It's not clear, but it should be coming out with some corn. So it can't be one drop of corn and a whole liquid, but it should be coming out with corn. You should be able to pour it. So you're going to waste you could eat it after Shabbos or whatever it is. You can eat it from there, but yeah, yes. Is that a comment?
Fruit cocktail,
Yeah,
is that considered a mixture?
it's a good question.
Big enough?
So if generally speaking, it's not exactly clear where you see the line exactly drawn between big item and small item. Typically, a fruit cocktail many would treat as a mixture because they're small chunks mixed together with a liquid. So we would typically, corn salad is definitely, pickles definitely not. Fruit salad will depend on if it's big chunks of fruit, maybe not. But a typical diced fruit salad we would treat as a corn salad, as a mixture. So again, what does that mean? So if I want to go ahead and I don't want it to be so liquidy, so no problem. So I pour out the liquid and I leave some liquid there, together, continuous with the rest of the salad. Or when I pour it out, I pour some fruit out, and whatever, I'll eat that fruit later by myself and not, I don't want to serve it like that, but I'll pour out some fruit myself. And then again, as long as I'm making sure I'm not making a clean separation between the two. Yes.
Or you could take the salad with a non-slotted spoon, right? You take
So yes, a non-slotted spoon, again, before I eat it, yes, I could take it out. I'd have to be careful not to go ahead, and we're going to talk about this soon, and take the spoon and kind of push it against then I'm still separating. But if it's just an extension of my hands, right, we spoke of this before, that if, theoretically I could put my hands into the fruit salad and take out the fruit that I want. That's just not something that's so sanitary or that I want to do. So if I use a spoon just in the extension of my hand, then that's okay. That's not
You could tip the spoon over if you're not putting it against the side.
Well, if I tip it over and I drain out all the liquid from it, then I just went ahead and was Borrer again. If I'm leaving some liquid in it, then that's okay. But if I go ahead and I tip it, then all the liquid's coming out, then once again I just was.
No, but as you're taking it, you're not.
As I'm taking, so again, if I'm taking it in a way that gets the solids, it's going to be very hard. Meaning, by definition, you're going to be pulling up some liquid. So if you start pouring it out and separating it, then you just start taking the bad from the good in that case. Yes.
So let's for argument's sake, you want both the liquid and the fruit. You just don't want them in the same place at the same time. You still could not strain out the liquid.
Right, that's a good question. So in a scenario where I want to just serve them separately, let's say let's just go back but you want both. So meaning, for example, you have a mixture of two. Let's just use an example that I could think of that's very practical. Let's say I have a pan of food, different chickens and roasted chicken and grilled chicken and whatever, and breaded chicken, and I want to just serve them in two separate plates, both for immediate use. I believe then it is seen as a mixture, but basically you're taking what you want ultimately from what you don't want, and therefore it would be fine. In other words, if I'm taking out the one, meaning I want them both. So if I want the liquid, I'm going to serve the liquid as drinks. I don't know, I'm making cocktails, and therefore I'm going to use the fruit juice. I don't know, and I'm using them both. Then yeah, I'm still taking the good from the good. I'm taking both things I want as long as I'm using it. It is a mixture. It is still a mixture. So you'd have to follow the rules of as long as it's for immediate use, i.e. food preparation before a meal, then that's okay.
So you could, all right, be very specific. You open up the can, however the can was open before Shabbos.
We could talk about opening cans later, yeah.
Sitting on the fruit juice, you won both.
Yeah.
You could use that. And you're gonna serve.
So I would not be able to use the top of the can because, well, that might be an issue. But if I'm able to pour it out properly, meaning pour it till it just starts dripping, that would be totally fine. I'd be totally fine to pour it out of the can. And if I go ahead and drink it after, then that's totally fine. Meaning, because then I want it both. I want the liquid. Right. So my kids will like drink the liquids from some of these cans, right? They think like it's delicious. It's like the sweetest like juice they'll ever drink. So they'll like pineapple juice, whatever it is, right? So if you want the pineapples, you want the dry pineapples, but someone's going to go ahead and drink it right away, that's fine. So you go ahead, you pour, even if it starts dripping, like it's really separating it out, that's fine. Since you're drinking the pineapple juice, it's what you wanted, right? They're both desired, and therefore, that's fine.
All right. You've got the pineapple rings.
Yeah.
You could hold them, wash your hands before you prepare food. You can hold the chunks, like the pineapple rings and pour out the liquid. And forgive me for being this specific, but it has come up.
It has come up. So is there an issue of holding back what's not coming out?
Right.
What would the issue be?
You want both. You want. Okay. Here's
Yeah, I don't think that would be an issue. I don't think that would be an issue. Just holding it back.
Pineapple juice, and you're going to use it for salad dressing, and you're cut up the
Yeah.
pineapple pieces.
Yeah.
And put it in the salad.
Yeah. So
You could hold it.
right. So you'd be able to hold. You can't use the can because that's really using utensil. But if you're using just your hand to hold it back as you're pouring out something that you do want, I don't think that'd be an issue. I don't think that'd be an issue. Okay. So similarly, tuna, right? This comes up a lot. Yes, you have tuna. You open the tuna can. We'll talk another time about how you open tuna cans, and you want to pour the liquid out. So what you can't do is start pouring the tuna liquid out until it starts dripping, because when it's dripping, that means that you basically are no longer sitting in its liquid. You've really separated it out. So what you could do is you could pour it out, but as long as it's still pouring, right? That means it's still sitting in liquid, and you haven't really separated it entirely. But once you start coming to a point where it starts like dripping, that's seen as like a good indicator. Once it starts dripping, that means that you no longer see it as liquid and tuna. Now the liquid is just like kind of embedded into the tuna. That's already going to be a problem. So again, pour it. As long as it's a continuous pour, that's okay, because it's, the tuna's sitting there, there's liquid, there's tuna, and you're just pouring out the liquid, and you're separating out the liquid, that's fine. But once you get to a point where it starts dripping, that means that the liquid is really embedded into the tuna, and therefore you're really taking it out from it, and therefore you've now really come to the point where you're really separating A and B. But as long as it's just pouring continuously, then it's still A and B mixed together. Yes? 100%.
Take the tuna out
100%.
because you're taking the good.
You got it.
bad,
You got it.
and-
There we go. We got the principles. Good. No, these are complicated principles. Ask away. This is good. Yes.
When you talked about the tuna can, like not using the top, which I don't, but I don't understand why I don't, because I was told you can't use the kli miuchad, but
You can't use what? Sorry.
I learned years and years ago that it has to be a specialized kli for this. So
Right.
The top is not made.
So you could use the utensil before you start separating. In other words, you could use the top as long as you're still as long as it's pouring continuously, right? Then what that means is you haven't really gotten up to Borrer yet. It's not yet a mixture. Meaning, what you're doing right now is you're taking liquid, which is not yet embedded, is not really mixed together the thing. So you could use the top, because if you're doing what
You wouldn't use a sip even at the beginning.
You can't use a utensil that's specialized for separating, right? But you could use the top of your can to help separate. But you just, once it starts getting past the flow part, right? Meaning you can't,
No, I understand
right?
that.
That's
It was the.
yeah. It is kind of.
The way you said it made it sound to me like that itself was the utensil.
Got it. So that can be done. Yes. There's a hand now? Okay, so let's talk about small items, very small items. So far we went from large items in a liquid, then we went small items mixed together. What if the items that are mixed in are so small that they're insignificant? A great example of this is water. Okay, so some of you may drink filtered water, some of you may not drink filtered water, but I think it's safe to say that most of us in America even if you do drink filtered water often, would be fine if someone serves you a glass of water and you're at their house and it's not filtered. You would drink it, right? I think whatever, you don't have to say yes or no, but I would drink it, okay? Many people drink it. Therefore, you're allowed to use a Brita filter on Shabbos, right? As long as you're assuming there's no technology, meaning some of them are more sophisticated and like they're I don't know exactly, but like a simple one that you put on before Shabbos, somebody have to press a button before Shabbos, that's fine, as long as you're not doing any technology on Shabbos and it's just pouring through it, right? So even though it is filtering, if you go to that filter at the end of the week after you've poured a lot of water, that you'll see a whole bunch of guck. Okay, it's a little gross. But the point is that since most of us, I'm sorry to ruin anyone's drinking water, but since most of us would go ahead and drink water without any issue, right? So we don't see that as a mixture on the right. So we're going to the opposite extreme now. It is right. So when it's a big item and a small item, we don't see it as a mixture because they're two distinct items. Over here, we're saying it's not a mixture, not because it's two separate items, because we don't even normally view this as a mixture. When someone gives you a cup of water, what do you say? Is this water? You say it's okay. There's some like tiny little stuff which I don't see, and therefore it's not a problem. Where it does get a little complicated is in Israel. Americans, especially, some Americans are very careful never to drink water that is not filtered in Israel. Okay, so if you're one of those people, then you are not allowed to use a Brita on Shabbos. If you're not one of those people, so when I was in Israel in yeshiva, so we had a Brita filter in our fridge. I was a person who would not think twice before drinking from a regular water fountain or drink water fine. And have friends who were very careful. So the Brita filter we put out on our Shabbos meal sometimes, and only some of us could use it. Because for me, who doesn't consider it to be like, I don't see that as substantial, therefore I'm allowed to use the Brita filter since I would drink anyways from regular water. Someone who normally is very careful about this, for them it's considered separating, and therefore they're not allowed to use the Brita filter. Yes?
Usually they're not allowed to fill it. Like if you fill it, they're allowed to drink from it.
Well, it depends how it works, but when you're pouring it out, I guess, right. So if Okay, so if the filter, correct. So if the way the filter works is that it's filtering when you first fill it, then that's fine. It's when, it's in a scenario where a person is going to go ahead and when it's filtering on the pouring out, that would be problematic. Or if it got filled on Shabbos, that might also be problematic since there's something which was being Borrer that was done that they consider to be illegal Borrer. I'm not sure. That would be a little more complicated. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Well, if you had two people at the table,
right,
we're talking about, and one person drinks the water all the time, so it wouldn't be and he's the one who filled it on Shabbos, so he's doing it for himself, and then the other person.
Right, but for that person, this was an act of Borrer. This was an act of Borrer for that person, even though it was being done for that person. It's a unique type of.
If he was doing it for the other person, I could see that.
Then it would certainly be problematic. I'm not 100% sure. I think it's okay, but I'm not 100% sure. Okay.
I have like coffee pots and teapots that I inherited. And they had
strainer at the top, a slot, right. So we're going to get into that when making a coffee, which we'll hopefully get to that today. Okay, so eating soup. Okay, so let's say a person wants to go ahead and just get the vegetables, right? You have a little child or an adult who just wants the carrots. So what you do is you take the soup and then you kind of put it against the wall of the bowl to get the liquid out and just get the solid. That's not allowed. That's not allowed because you're using, again, when are you allowed to use utensil? Only when it's an extension of your hand, right? In other words, in a scenario where I'm just reaching it's called reaching, but it's kind of weird. If I'm eating soup, it's very hard to eat soup with your hand. And therefore I use a spoon to help me pick up the liquid. Okay, that's permitted. If I have a fork, because it's kind of gross to go ahead and touch my chicken with my hands, I use a fork, that's an extension of my hand. But now I'm using the utensil, the spoon, as a utensil to separate. Granted, it's not the slotted spoon, which is biblically prohibited, but I'm essentially using utensil no longer just to grab something, but now I'm using it as a form of I'm using it in order to make separations. Therefore, I'm not allowed to use the spoon again to go ahead and drain out the liquid. That would not be allowed to be done on Shabbos, okay? Okay, let's talk about bones and flesh, okay? So bones and flesh, right? We don't think about this, but if you eat chicken, or you eat meat, or you eat fish, right, that has a bone, what's happening? There's good mixed together with bad. What's the right way to go ahead and cut your chicken, cut your meats, cut your fish? In those scenarios, right, you don't want to eat the bone, right? You're not going to eat the bone, I don't think, right? And you do want to eat the chicken, meat, fish, right? So when a person goes ahead and eats fish, so what you could do, one way of doing this, and with fish or chicken and meat, oftentimes this could be done easily, and that is you could make sure, and there's a little bit counterintuitive, it's not the way we normally cut. Normally we put our fork into what we want, cut it away from what we don't want, right? What you could do, one way of doing this, is put the fork into what you don't want. Put the fork onto the bone, right? Hold the bone down, cut the meat off, right? And then you don't have a problem, because then you've just taken the good, what you want, from what you don't want. Okay, we'll see there's other ways around this in a second, right? You understand? Meaning, if I'm putting normally the way I cut is I put the fork into the piece of chicken that I'm about to eat, right? And then I cut it away from the bone, okay? So in that case, I went ahead and I took so what happens? The fork is stationary, the bone I'm pushing away, right? So what did I just do? I just took away the bad from the good. So some argue that this would be a form of borrer. Again, I want to be clear where we are. If it's the beginning of your steak or the beginning of your chicken, You didn't do anything. Because there you took a piece of chicken from chicken and bone. We're only talking about the last pieces that are on the bone, right? Just want to be clear about that based on principles we saw earlier. So when I'm cutting the first bunch of pieces, you don't even have to think about this, right? You just eat normally. But when you get to the end, when you get to the bone with the chicken, you're just cutting off the last piece. If I put my fork in the chicken and then I push away, then I'm moving the bone away, then I've just taken the bad, I've moved the bad away from the good. I can't do that. I have to put my fork in the bone, or like hold the bone down with that fork, and then cut away the chicken. Yes?
So I always understood that fish bones were a problem because they're so small, but that chicken bones I thought because they're so big they're not considered.
So there is a machlokas about this. Some do understand that no, at the end of the day, it's really seen as a mixture, meaning it is seen as a mixture. This goes back to our pickles and brine question, meaning there are those who argue that no, chicken and its bone is never seen as a mixture to begin with. It's only fish and its bone, which, by the way, many suggest, although I'm not so clear if this is the case, but some suggest that the reason gefilte fish became as popular as it did was in order to avoid Borrer. Because probably the real answer was that they're dirt poor, our grandparents and great grandparents, whatever. And this is having a combination of fish may have been cheaper, but I have no idea. I don't know. So there's different theories surrounding it, but whatever. Bottom line is, with fish is certainly problematic, and therefore you either put your fork into the bones and take away the fish, or what you could do is you put it both in your mouth, and then it depends where who's at your table, and then you take the bones out of your mouth. That would be another way of doing so. Yes?
And then there's skin on the chicken.
Okay. So skin is a matter of discussion and debate. How do we treat skin? So many people do eat skin. Some people don't eat skin. It also changes with time. Nowadays, many people will stay away from skin because it's seen as less healthy, right? So many will. The bottom line is what general consensus is that if a person does want to remove the skin, since the way to get to the chicken is by removing the skin, it goes back to the banana peel, which I still haven't talked about, and that is that you're allowed to eat bananas on Shabbos, right? How do you get to the banana? The only way to get to the banana is by removing the peel, and therefore it's not considered separating, it's called eating because it's the only way you could eat it. So similar to this peel, the skin, the only way to get to the chicken. So if you want to fulfill all opinions, what you could do is peel the skin, but as long as it's right before you're eating, which is the normal case. Again, if you're serving and you're making preparations and it's well before the meal, that's where you're going to get into problems. But usually if you're serving chicken with a skin on it, you don't like the skin, you take it off right away before, that's fine because it's just the way that you get to the chicken. Okay? So it would be okay. Again, going back to the bones on the meat or chicken, so ideally, if you're cutting all the way up to the bone, ideally at the last pieces you want to put your fork into the bone or as best as possible and remove the chicken, or you leave a little bit of chicken, a little bit of meat there, and then, with a steak, usually it's not going to, it's hard sometimes to get right away to the end or whatever it is, but as long as you leave a little bit of chicken or meat there, then you're never really separating fully A from B, and therefore it's not going to be problematic. Yes?
I wonder if schnitzel became popular because then you don't have
also no bones. Could be. I'm not sure. Yes?
So I don't really eat whole fish on Shabbos, but with fish it's a lot harder because there's so many bones are so small. So in that case, that's it was a banana peel. Like you have to remove the bones to get to the meat sometimes. Like it's not like you have a piece of one big bone and there's meat on it. It's like the whole thing.
You're saying since it's impossible to do it this way, is it impossible to do it this way? I mean,
I don't know, it's so small. I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to even see the fish bones.
yeah.
When you have whole fish, it's usually you got the spine. and
You usually have-
pull the
right.
meat away from the spine.
Right. So you find right. I mean, here it's a little bit different than the peel. Meaning, we're going to get to watermelons where this may be a little bit more similar to, which some would, old watermelons. Nowadays, and we don't have no seeds in the watermelons anymore, right? But back in the day, I'm sure they still have some with seeds, right? Okay, whatever. Anyway, so like people who don't want to spit out the seeds, or for young children who will not eat it or whatever without the seeds, there is a discussion, even though it's not the same as a peel, where everyone agrees you could take the peel off, it's a little bit different because you really could access it. So with the fish, you really could access it. There are those who say that since the only way that some people are going to eat it is to remove the bad, it's a form of eating. Not everyone loves his opinion, and presumably a similar type of thing with the fish. Most people do not love that opinion, but there's what to rely upon to do those types of things. Yeah. Okay. Rinsing fruits from pesticides and germs. Okay. So meaning fruit is clean. You brought a fruit from the supermarket, right? A bunch of people touched it before you did, squeezed it, looked at it, you held it up to the sun. So there's no visible dirt, right? And therefore you're allowed to wash it off. But let's say it's dirty fruits. There it's a lot more problematic. Sometimes it depends where you shop. You might get especially grapes or things like that. Sometimes, again, depends on the type of store. Sometimes it's really straight from the farm and they're dirty. They're dirty and you have dirt on them. So really you should rinse those before Shabbos, okay? There is what to rely upon if it's just being rinsed. If it's just being rinsed, you're holding them under the water. You can't soak them. Everyone agrees you can't soak the fruits, like put them in a bowl and allow the dirt to kind of separate. But putting them under a sink, there is what to rely upon. Or Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, there are those who say if you're just holding under a sink, that's not really called separating, even though there is separating going on. So ideally, you should wash it before Shabbos. There is what to rely upon to wash it, even if there's dirt. But everyone agrees if you're just cleaning it for things which are invisible to the naked eye, just like the rock, if you're invisible to the naked eye, again, like pesticides, germs, that's not seen as separating, and therefore to rinse. If you have a clean apple sitting in your apple, whatever, your fruit drawer, to go ahead and put it underwater, everyone agrees that that's okay. Okay, fine. Books on a bookshelf. Okay, so here we're going to get into so we've been talking about fruits and eating, but sorting is not limited to food. Okay, so for example, let's say you have books on a bookshelf. Am I allowed to go ahead and take? Let's say I say tomorrow morning, I want to go ahead and read that book. Okay, so I want to get off. Right now, there's lights on in my living room, and my bookshelf is there. And tomorrow morning, there's not going to be any lights on, and I want to be able to read it. So I take it off. If I take it for immediate use, there's not even a question, right? But am I allowed to take it for use tomorrow? Right? Do I see the books on my bookshelf as a mixture or not? Right? Something we don't think about. So, yeah.
You're saying take it on Shabbos
for the next morning. For the next morning. No, Friday night for Shabbos morning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Meaning I'm not preparing for tomorrow. Sorry. I'm sorry. Friday night the Shabbos lights are on, and I wake up early in the morning and I want to read. I don't want to wake anyone up, and it's dark. Whatever it is. So is a bookshelf filled with books considered a mixture? Many say it is not, because you see all the spines of the books. They're all clear, and therefore we do not see that as a mixture, and therefore the books on sitting up on a bookshelf would not be considered a mixture. However, if you have a pile of books that are mixed together, that on like a table, that would be a mixture. Okay, so that's meaning if I have a bunch of Sfarim over here, a bunch of books that are lying on my desk or lying over here, then it's not the same as when it's distinct. We don't see that as a mixture. When it's piled over here, that would be a mixture. So we'll come back to that. We'll come back to those books in a little bit. Another very practical example is, let's say you have a pile of disorganized coats. Let's say you have a lot of guests and you ran out of hangers, or this happens to kids sometimes. All the kids will go ahead and they'll dump their coats all together in one pile in the corner of a kid's room or whatever it is. And now they want to go ahead and get their coats from the bottom of all the coats. They know they came first. I came first to this house, and my coat's on the bottom of all those coats, okay? But I have a mixture over here. And if I start going ahead and start taking the coats I don't want, what am I doing? Moving them out of the way. I'm taking the undesired from the desired. Am I allowed to do that? So some say that I'm allowed to, if it's the only way to reach it, then one would argue that I could do so. Ideally, they say if you can, don't put it so far away, keep it somewhat continuous, keep it somewhat mixed together, and therefore it's not going to be a problem. In other words, if it's a mixture, if you haven't really separated it, the best thing to do would be, you can just move them, but don't put them off to the side, right? If you just move them a little bit, then it's going to be okay, because you never really broke up the mixture, and therefore there's never even a question. If you're...
Can you say that again?
Again, I have a pile of coats, big pile of coats, okay? And I want to get my coats on the bottom.
What does it mean?
So meaning, let's say as opposed to, let's say these are my coats, and as opposed to going coats, and really separating it, I just dig in. I allow the mixture to remain in front of me. Then it's going to be okay. Another case. Okay, so let's say you have a case of folded items. Okay, let's say you have a case of folded items that are sitting in your drawer. Okay, is that a mixture? The poskim say it's not a mixture because it's similar to the books on a bookshelf. They're seen as separate and distinct. So I would be allowed to go ahead on Friday nights. I do this all the time in my house because I want to keep the light off in my room. I wake up early. I will let my wife, if the kids don't jump on her head, sleep a little bit. So I'll take out what I need on Friday night for the next morning, right? So if I'm doing that, I'm taking it out of a drawer, or even I would add, by the way, let's say I have clothing hanging in a closet, and it's all a bunch of, let's say it's all similar types of, it's a bunch of suits. Okay, so I have all I wear is suits. I have 20, a bunch of suits, blue, black, it's all mixed together. That's a mixture, right? At the end of the day, it's a mixture. Am I allowed to take the suit I want to wear on Shabbos morning out of my closet? The answer is that many see it. So when it's going to be okay, so. Okay, I apologize. Actually, I think I made a mistake. I apologize. When things are actually side by side, then when a person should ideally go ahead, okay, and not, I mixed up the folded case. Excuse me. With the folded case, what I am allowed to do is similar to the case of a bunch of coats on top of it. If the only way to reach the thing that I need is by moving those other things away, with folded things, sorry, I mixed it all up. Scratch. Okay, here we go. We're rewinding, okay? So in a situation with the coats, it's going to be, there's a mixture, and therefore what I am allowed to do with a mixture is, what I should do with a mixture is not really break up the mix, right? I just like push it away, like we spoke before, and get what I want. When it's folded clothing, I can't do that. Right? If it's folded clothing, I can't start pushing everything away because I'm going to undo all the folds. So what I am allowed to do with folded clothing, if it's something that I need, I am allowed to move away this shirt, and get to the shirt that I need. It's not that it's not a mixture, it's just that it's similar to a banana peel, where with a banana peel, the only way to get to what I need is by going ahead and separating it, right? And therefore, it's going to be, I'm allowed to remove the folded clothing to get to the folded clothing that I need. But it's still a mixture, and therefore I need to do it immediately before use, right? It is a mixture. So I apologize. And with folded clothing, it is a mixture. I'm only allowed to do it for immediate use. If you have, now here's where it gets different. Let's say you have a drawer, and apologize. If you have a drawer where you have, let's say, shirts piled over here, and you have pants piled over here, right? And they're side by side. Is that a mixture? That is not a mixture. So in such a case, if you want to go ahead and take those things out from your drawer right before Shabbos, right, then that's going to be okay. Or, on Friday night for Shabbos day, then you could do that. That's not considered a mixture. And it'd be allowed to take like an undershirt from here, a pair of pants over here, and because that is not considered a mixture. Got it? Yes.
So in terms of immediate use, if someone's getting dressed,
Mm-hmm.
do they have to take out a sock and put on the sock? Or can they
No. It's getting dressed. That's okay. That's okay. Yes.
You're not allowed to start organizing things.
Definitely not.
I have such a big problem when, Shabbos, I'm like, really need to organize this in here, and I'm like, no, I can't, it always happens on Shabbos. I don't know.
You have extra time on your hands. Yeah.
Yeah.
So want to go back to clothing. So if you have, if you have a bunch of shirts that are all the same, and you just choose one of them, right? Then that's not a problem. Okay, it's not going to work for any of you. Works for me. Okay, so it's a goal. But let's say I have like a bunch of white shirts. Okay, so there's whatever. They're all the same shirts. I mean, whatever. This company, that company, but they're all the same thing. They're all more or less the same thing. And I'm just taking one shirt from the shirts for tomorrow. That's not considered a mixture since it's all the same thing. Now, even if one is this company, this one's a little bit older than that one, it's all more or less the same thing. But in your typical case, where you're going to have, let's say, a bunch of outfits side by side, and they are different, then that is considered a mixture, even though they're hanging side by side. And therefore, when it comes to the items which are different from one another, okay, so certainly outfits, there's some discussion about suits, but let's keep it certainly for outfits that are different, distinct from one another, but they're all piled, they're all hanging one next to another, you'd only be allowed to take it out before you're getting dressed, as you're getting dressed. And again, to the point before, it doesn't mean like the second before, as you're, I'm getting dressed now. You take this out, you take the socks out, whatever, that's all allowed. But to take it out the night before, that's going to be problematic if they're all side by side, they're all smushed together. That's going to be seen as a mixture. Yes?
So if you have something you want to hang up,
Yeah.
are there any issues with this?
No.
Just,
What would be the issue? Meaning I have something that's just sitting over here, it's a shirt, and I want to just put it back on a hanger and put it back in. I didn't separate it from anything, I just put it back.
If it's in your closet, and so in my closet I've got shirts and then sweaters and skirts, am I allowed to put it with the shirts as opposed to the sweaters?
Yeah, so you could put it in the middle of the shirt if you want. I mean, you're saying for a second I'm separating it. I'm not sure if you even consider that separating, meaning to make space for it.
No, she's saying putting it away.
No, but let's say it's no different than I have a fork. I cleaned a fork, one fork, and now I want to put it. I open the drawer, and there's forks over here, there's knives over here. I put other forks. That's fine. It's just a fork, but that's not a problem. Yeah.
One thing that I learned about Borrer is if you're not selecting the thing, if you're just taking one thing randomly.
Correct.
So if you're just picking up the shirt from the top of the pile, you're not selecting it. It's just happening to the top thing. That's not the same thing as putting all the shirts here and all the skirts there and all the socks there. Just taking one thing, you can put it away. You're taking that thing, you can put it away. It's not
correct. So we're going to get into that, and I'm realizing, thank God, this took us a little bit longer than I expected, which is fine. It's 9:30. It's basically 9:30. So yeah, one of the things we're going to talk about is scenarios where I'm not picking deliberately. That's going to be relevant to putting clothing away, putting books away, and we're going to get into that. I guess let's hold on. I'll keep these and I'll give these back next week. It's 9:30 now, so let's. You wrote all them. Okay, so hold on to it. If you could bring it back next week, I'll have some more copies. But if you could bring it back next week, we'll go to the second side tomorrow, next Sunday. Okay, and the Sunday after that, yeah, that should give us enough time, right? The Sunday after that, we'll do a review of Hanukkah. Okay. Have a great day.